Give me just a second, and I'll be right back. It'll take me just a second. So you guys just please bear with me. This is an interesting topic, and I will be right back. You're gonna want to check this one out because I think you all like it. Okay, just a second. So I had this incredible adventure today, and I went down to the there we go. Click, close, dismiss, close, and close. Okay, we close all that. Alright, looks like we're operating now. Okay. So, I had this most interesting day. And you know what sucks is I don't have this one set up to where it has closed captioning. So, my apologies. But I went on this interesting walk. And while I make Alex Food, we'll discuss this walk. Because it started off with me deciding to go down to the Sunday co-op festival thing that they have downtown here in Vancouver, Washington, and Saturday market, excuse me, but it's on Sunday, so I don't know if it's on Saturday as well. But I went down there and I hung out for a bit, and I went down to the Christian Science Center, and I picked up a couple Bibles because you can donate, and I passed out a couple I already had. And the cool thing is about it is that there's more and more of us that are growing that are getting bound to Genesis. And because a lot of it's about new beginnings, like new beginnings. And then we'll tie in some other stuff from the rest of the Bible in it too. But part of the reason why we do this is because, one, it helps with us trying to stay sober. It helps with our mental health. It gives us an alternative to do, and it keeps us in a faith. And we're not talking like the Christian, Catholic, Jewish, or Muslim faith, or Asian, or we're not aspiring to any one of them, but the culmination of all of them, if you will. Because in Genesis, there's a point before there was any religion, before there was any belief system, if you will, and just an understanding of creation and the new beginnings. And I came across a friend of mine who, him and I were talking, and you know, he's trying to stay sober, and he's doing more of his work, and he wants to get together with me, and he's got himself his own Bible and stuff, and we're going to do some reading. But we agreed that it's like he himself wanted out, like I wanted out, because one, what it elicits to be a part of the world as an active drug addict these days, and you are what you eat, so like if you're filling the coffers with the wrong people, it makes you feel wrong. And then also too, the drug is just dirty these days. There's no quality control, and it's just eating us all away. And so like we want help, but the only place that we're getting help, because we can't turn to our own people or our own community realistically without this cowardly approach to it. And I do mean to hurt feelings there, because you'll make fun of us, you'll joke about us, you'll put us down, you'll put yourself in a higher pillar than us, but you've never been through what we've been through. You've never had no one ever but the Bible to help you. And to know that all the faiths that you turn to in one way or another, they do end up snubbing their nose at you. And so it's like, we talked about new beginnings. You know, we talked about like quality control. We talked about faith and belief and loving one another. And it was interesting because it's like, we hit home with Genesis, you know, new beginnings. And like I traveled on from there, and I ended up going and playing basketball with Nog, and I came across this kid. Well, actually, I didn't come across the kid. The kid came across me. Like him and his family came up, and we're like, "Hey, can we play basketball with you?" And I'm like, "Totally, man," you know. And so I'm like playing basketball with this guy, and I think he's 10 years old, and it was his grandfather that brought him. And I was just thinking about like when my grandbaby's old enough that we can play basketball or catch or things like that, or what she's doing with her other grandparents, and how interactive they are in their life. And it was kind of funny because like we got to talking about stuff, and he brings up this subject and he says it, and I might have to say it a couple times because it was very important, very valid the way he said it. And it was this kid of knowledge, like super, like on point with what he was saying. And he said, children will always be the true army of the gods. And I've thought about that. And I was like, I questioned him. I said, who came first, humans or animals? And he said animals. And I said to him, then who is the true army of God? And then he said, well, and I said, so we're equal then, right? And he's like, yeah. And so like his grandpa was like, man, I'm just Irish. I don't understand this. And I'm like, oh man, you sure, like, you need to do more. But we started playing basketball, and the kid is on point. He's just like making the shots, And it was interesting because I was reading this passage in the Bible, and I picked up these Bibles today, and I'm really, really thankful and really glad that I got 2 of these Bibles today. Because in 2 of them, there is a wordage that is used that is not used in any of my other Bibles. And I've got a bunch of Bibles, and they come from various different eras and various different translations and copyrights and stuff. But these 2 in particular, they're very particular King James Version, and this is an older one, okay? This is the older one. And then this is the newer one that's like a softback print of it, and I haven't read all the way through it, but these 2 do match. And one is a King James American Bible Study, and the other one is a authorized King James Version Oxford. And then I have this one also that I got today that is the New English Bible Oxford, and it is way different. And I'm not very happy with this one actually at all. Not happy very much at all, especially when it concerns Genesis. It's very limiting. It's very like zero mindset of a child, no imagination. It's very constructed to like this is how it has to be, and it doesn't even apply to anything that is relevantly found today. Like I'm like, really guys, what the fuck happened? Who, So, but in these 2, now these, and again, like New English Bible, King James Version American Bible Society, King James Authorized Version Oxford. So we have 2 Oxfords that are totally fucking different. Totally fucking different, right? But this King James American Bible Society and King James Oxford match, which is interesting. But here's the problem though with both of these. They are both the King James translation. And even a New Testament, or not New Testament, a New International Version still actually operates off of the last King James translation in all relation. So there's another translation that needs to be made, and that would be the American English translation. Now that's going to be different, and it's going to have to take you some time in all reality, because we can, in most American English words, use a word from old days, but it doesn't have the same truth behind it. It doesn't have the same weight behind it, right? So I was reading these Bibles, right? And in this one Bible, and I'll go with this one here real quick. Now it's very interesting, okay? Now in Genesis 1:25, no, let's see here where it says. Yeah, 25. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. and God saw that it was good. Now, that's pretty interesting because it deviates between his kind and their kind. And then it talks about these winged birds after his kind. Now, if you think about later on in the Bible, there are relations to where angelic creatures appeared in certain forms. And a lot of them always had wings. So wings, in the beginning of Genesis here, if you look at it, it's talking about a winged creature after his kind. Now, could that be a denotation in a way of saying in one projected? Because you got to remember that Genesis is told from the perspective of one who had seen the creation of our universe, and specifically all the way up to the birth of earth in its habitable form in 6 days. So now this could be the blink of an eye in God. This could be nothing in the time of God. But in the creature's relation between it seeing the creation of nothing into the universe up to the point of the creation of Earth's ability to create life in 6 days was then bestowed upon us. So if you think about this, this may be a reference to the winged beings of old, of very, very old. Now, I was thinking about people who are translating such things as what means the giant creatures that creepeth across the earth after their kind, right? So you start thinking about it, and a lot of people go, well, dinosaurs were put here on the earth to test the faith of man. Well, if you think about Genesis, God is talking about ginormous creatures that crept across the earth, and ginormous beings that crept across the earth. And at one time, these ginormous beings interacted with these ginormous creatures. And so, like, if you think about this, this is where I proposed a question to this kid. Because I needed somebody who had the imagination outside of the boxing mindsets of what had always been presented to me by most people of faith. Especially when this young man told me that children will always be the true soldiers of God. Now, this is something that you can find both in Old Testament and New Testament, the way the kid presented it to me. And if you break down the way he said it, you'll see the imagery of its presence presented in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, combined into a hybrid thought of the two matters. So I asked him, I said, if dinosaurs are supposed to be millions of years old, and there's a concept that these creatures truly existed and roamed the earth, and we have found an inevitable footprint, whose footprint dates among the same time as these ginormous creatures, who supposedly could even breathe fire back in the day. Could this be the last presence of a human that may have petrified all the way to solid rock by this time in the future? Be the presence of ginormous humans that existed alongside the dinosaurs, and maybe even these dinosaurs of their size, being a fuel source for these giant people that lived among them, as in how we eat animals today. And he said, of course, totally, that makes sense. And if you think about it, as time goes on, people and things have shrunken in size. So there could have been presence of people that were big enough to ride dinosaurs back in the day. But we are not relevant to finding that information yet. And it's pretty interesting because the Bible tells you that you will learn things that are vastly old to require somebody who can help read to you the essence of the past. And so it was pretty interesting because the family reached out to hang out with me, and I was playing basketball, contemplating some biblical things I read in these old Bibles and these old translations of them. And then it was like, wait a second, why don't I ask the kid? Because you're always supposed to reach out to the kid when you're lost in imagination and you cannot find the key to proceed forward. And so I said, hey, I got a question for you, since you're already talking to me about how children are the true army of God. And this is also true because we need children to continue on forward what God has built today, or the gods. Now there is a sense that we may be the embryo of a God being born, the individual parts creating its existence, its intelligence, its immunity. So when you think about it, we are inside 100 million light year embryo that has been just found. And it makes sense for our galaxy of our size to be inside of a firmament that one could finally find these days when things are getting as rough and as dangerous and as violent as they are. We need this entity to continue into existence and evolve into what it's supposed to be. So I also asked this child about how we reach out to animals. And the kid was brilliant. He just continued to play basketball and said, you have to make sure that they understand and that you can understand them. That takes time and practice. And I was like, this is totally cool. And then I had to bid them that family farewell because I was still having some cardiac trouble. But it was really a vastly interesting venture today. And I just kind of want to present it to you guys. There is a lot to be found when you're lost in your own beliefs and your own faith. If you can reach out to children in an open mindset that does not create structures, that deems that their openness could be wrong. Because you're the one that is asking them to answer a question where you're lost. And whether you agree or disagree with their answer, it's still a valid one. It's one that you didn't have. And if it is one that you've already had, maybe it's time for a more in-depth conversation and creating more imagination together that would create family bonds that are everlasting. So I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy it.